It's Ideasphere with political economist and professor Gordon Lafer. His book, The 1% Solution, How Corporations Are Remaking America One State at a Time.
It's no surprise that life has gotten harder for the majority of American families compared to what it was like 30, 40 years ago. People look at a lot of different things to figure out why it's gotten harder. Some of it is globalization, some of it is technology, various different things. But it turns out that right beneath our noses, one of the main forces making life harder for the majority of Americans is that the biggest American companies that we know, Walmart, Amazon, Google, Coca-Cola, GM, Ford, are working in a very coordinated, explicit manner to lower the minimum wage, to cut unemployment insurance, to make work less safe, and of course to do away with unions. What this book shows is to transfer both money and power from the hands of normal working Americans to the elite, to the richest people, but also the biggest corporations in the country. They have been working at this, and they're very well funded. They come up with a lot of ideas, and they move these ideas through state legislatures. And I think that now that we have unified Republican control of the federal government, what we're going to see is the kind of things that my book describes as having happened in the state legislatures over the last 6 or 7 years is going to be the playbook that we see unrolled in the federal level.
Let's look at some of the things that are happening in our country, state by state.
Yeah, what we've really seen at the states is organizations like the Koch brothers, who are big oil money, created an organization called Americans for Prosperity, which is very, very well funded. And they put money into writing laws, into training local activists, into a lot of TV and radio ads, into a lot of money for political campaigns. And in many places, you can buy a state legislative seat for $50,000, right? What's very small money to big corporations can swing legislative elections. And that means they can go to legislators and say, either vote how we want, or next election is going to be your last election and we're going to fund your opposition.
Something that everybody is familiar with, at least in terminology, but not necessarily really cognizant of the depth and breadth of this move by the Supreme Court. Citizens United.
Citizens United was a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court that said that corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money in politics. This is something that a majority of the country still thinks is wrong, and a number of different states, including conservative states, have passed citizens' referendum against, but it's still the law of the land. It was passed in January 2010, and it made a sea change in politics, both at the federal level but also at the state level. So we've seen since then a flood of money coming from corporations into politics, and a flood of money that can come secretly in ways that none of us can know exactly who's paying for what. The thing that most people have heard of is, if they've heard of anything of this, is Scott Walker in early 2011 making legislation that did away with union rights for all the public employees in Wisconsin. But that didn't come just out of Scott Walker's brain. That was part of a big national effort by the corporate lobbies, and it was made possible by the Supreme Court ruling saying, for the first time, there's now no limit on how much money you spend, and you can do it all secretly so you don't have to worry about consumer boycotts. And that has really made a huge change in American politics. Part of what Citizens United made possible is that inequality in money got translated into inequality in political power. Because when politicians are all the more dependent on money, and suddenly the Supreme Court says, you unbelievably super rich people and you unbelievably super profitable corporations, now there's no limit on what you can spend, then we see like the same crisis of inequality that's in our economic lives gets translated into politics, where the vote of a normal person counts much, much, much less than somebody who can spend millions of dollars on politics.